A spacecraft was found on a ranch northwest of Roswell in the US. The find sparked the most talked about UFO case in history, and the date is now celebrated as World UFO Day.
Australia has its own history of unexplained phenomena, and to tell us more about it, we're joined in the studio by Sydney UFO researcher Bill Chalker. Bill, how do you make UFOs something that's not a woo thing and people mightn't understand to something that you see in quite concrete terms and investigate physical evidence of possible UFOs?
Yeah, I think people need to, and the media need to understand that most of what you hear about in media coverage is what I call UFO theatre, and probably 1% of the time there's a serious engagement with the UFO subject, and there's just thousands of sightings and lots of credible witnesses, that kind of thing, and we have a really rich history of really compelling cases in Australia alone, with some very high credential witnesses and a lot of highly credentialed people that were really seriously interested in it, like Dr. John Farrens, the former Chief of Defence Science, that kind of thing. He told me personally that he was going to write his own UFO book and decided to wait for mine, and unfortunately when mine came out he had died about a week later, so I have no idea whether he read the book, but he was seriously interested in the UFO subject.
Believers in UFOs are often typecast as, quite frankly, nutcases in popular culture, but also in real life. But you yourself, you have a science degree with majors in chemistry and mathematics, so your belief is based on science and evidence and fact. So what have you found in terms of this UFO phenomenon? Is it really in existence? Yeah,
I firmly believe that it is in existence, because probably upwards of about 10% of cases remain unexplained. That's not only unexplained to people who witness the UFO phenomenon, but also to people like myself who have got, I guess, the research skills to try and investigate all sorts of sensible possible explanations and that kind of thing. And I've seen things myself as well under pretty extraordinary circumstances which I can't explain as well, and so I've got no doubt that there is a real bona fide UFO phenomenon. I'm certainly not alone just in terms of scientists, but a lot of scientists have to deal with the ebb and flow of the consequences of having a high profile interest, so they tend to be pretty quiet. So there's this kind of underground invisible college type thing that works and is really engaged with the UFO subject that most people don't hear about.
Let's talk about some of that underground world. You might not want to reveal much about it, but you talked about that the consequences for a scientist is similar to faith and religion. I've heard that a lot of scientists, about 30% of scientists, are actually quite religious. They believe in the reincarnation, but it's something that as a scientist it can put doubt on the credibility of your work if you're too open about it. Is there a need for that underground part of the UFO industry really to be more open about what you're researching?
Well, it already has been to a certain extent, but it's sort of a bit of a hit and miss kind of situation. You know, you have people like the late Dr. Alan Hynek, who's kind of famous for the term Close Encounters of the Third Kind. He put out a really solid kind of foundational book study called the UFO Experience back in the 70s, and it was a really classic study. But when he did that, during 1973, there was a major wave of UFO sightings across America in particular, and a lot of unexplained cases. And for the first time, a lot of the so-called invisible college that worked with him sort of started to come out in the open, but it was still far too early because there was a lot of ridicule and that kind of stuff, and yet there were highly credible cases by military pilots, radar cases, that kind of thing, but all that gets swept under the UFO theatre, and it's always a bit of a soundbite kind of approach to the subject. And if anybody approaches it to the extent perhaps I have in terms of going into it in depth, there's such a compelling body of data that's quite amazing.
Okay, Bill Chalker, thank you very much for updating us, and I'm sure we'll talk to you in the future as well.
Okay.
Thanks so much, Bill.
No worries.
Across the globe, World UFO Day is underway as the curious and the converted look to the skies to celebrate all things extraterrestrial.
We have our very own Agent Mulder. He's getting the party started in Australia. Bill Chalker says he spotted UFOs right here on home soil. He joins us now. Bill, today's a big day for the true believers out there. What exactly are you going to celebrate?
Well, I don't class myself as exactly a true believer, but I'm certainly interested in it from a scientific point of view. And so, yeah, it's sort of an opportunity to draw attention to what to me and to thousands of other people around the world is a really interesting subject.
Yeah, well, it was a bunch of sightings that got you into studying UFOs, wasn't it? So tell us what happened.
That was during my university days, studying chemistry and mathematics, etc. There were a whole wave of sightings on the Dorrigo Plateau, and it wasn't just locals, etc. These things didn't go away. we actually sent a team down from the university and spent a couple of months actually examining all the things that were sort of going on in the area, and a lot of it was really quite striking and unusual and very difficult to explain.
What sort of things were you seeing?
What were you seeing?
Lights, objects, actually structured things, and sort of landing them behind mountains and all that kind of stuff. So it was a pretty amazing period.
You're a mathematician, you're a chemist, you're studying science. It's real issues, they're real things that are tangible. Then you see something that, for most of us, in fact, many of us, is way out of the realms of possibility. How does that affect you?
Well, for me, it just got me more and more curious. For many academics and scientists that I brought down with me, the reaction varied from the point of view, well, I don't want to know about that. Even when they saw it themselves, they just didn't fit in within their paradigm, so they just felt it was too difficult to handle. So,
Bill, you've had countless sightings, you know.
Well, I wouldn't say countless sightings. I've investigated countless reports.
Countless reports.
So you've never actually seen...
I've seen it, yes.
But what's been the most incredible encounter?
Well, the kind of cases that I like to deal with are physical trace type cases where an object's seen and lands, leaves behind tangible marks, because as a chemist you can take that kind of thing in a laboratory, and there are literally thousands of those sorts of cases around the world, but generally speaking, the general public, the media, don't really engage seriously with the subject. They deal with what I refer to as the UFO theatre, which really doesn't connect very much with the UFO subject. It's a lot more substantial than that.
It's funny, isn't it, that that it does become a bit of a joke, but is that because you think deep down people are a little bit afraid of it, because it is the unknown?
Well, it's possible, but I think people don't really seriously engage with it and don't drill down deeply enough into the subject to realise that there's such a substantial phenomenon going on that's largely ignored by the general public.
Well, what would you say to the sceptics out there who go, oh, come on, this can't be right?
Well, most sceptics don't practice scepticism. I regard myself as a sceptic. They practice debunking more than anything, and scepticism means you actually investigate and research things, and that's what I do. So,
but in your belief, we're not alone.
I think it's a probably reasonable explanation for what's going on with UFO sightings. Yeah.
I don't think we're alone. I believe in aliens.
Do you?
Yeah.
Great. Can I call the Daily Mail now?
Put it this
Sonia believes in
way,
aliens.
we're the most intelligent life form in the universe. It's a very depressing thought. So.
I think, but you would say, also mathematically speaking, it just makes sense.
No, it does make sense. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's. Next week you're off to Canada to film a new docu-series called Close Encounters. What is behind this? Are you going to meet other people who have been?
Well, no, it's essentially researchers like myself that have come together and basically focusing on the cases that we regard as really worthwhile and interesting to look at. So it really focuses on the unexplained cases, and people like myself and probably up to about 20 or 30.
Dan Aykroyd's hugely into this. Yeah,
but he doesn't do any deep research. So.
No, it's the actual scientific
crazy
research.
for it.
Yeah.
Research.
So it should be interesting.
Roswell, would that form part of that study?
No,
that's
Area
too far in
51.
the past.
Area 51.
No. It's really about compelling cases that have been sort of factually documented and a lot of evidence for them.
Do you have a favourite? Is E.T. like your favourite film? Do you have a favourite movie like that though?
No,
Big
not
Bang
really.
Theory.
Close Encounters.
No, most of Hollywood's films I thought are pretty miserable. Close Encounters of the Third Kind wasn't too bad because it actually was inspired by a lot of true cases. So.
Yeah, right. But E.T.
E.T.'s lovable, but not much of a
Bill, if
UFO
you find
film.
something, will you call us?
Yeah.
Let us know.
I'm sure I'll pass it on.
We are true
will hear
believers
about
here.
it.
We are basically Mulder and Scully.
He is
Okay.
an alien. He is.
Well, I was wondering.
Yeah, I really shouldn't be here. I must
you,
go.
Bill.
Lovely to meet you. Please let us know what's happened and what your findings are.
Yeah,
Okay,
all the best
pleasure.
for the documentary too. Coming up, funny girl Melissa McCarthy says she struggles to find good fashion for her figure.